This week on To the Contrary.
First, has Hillary clinched it? Then, black men are living longer. Yay! But white women's life expectancy is contracting. Why? Behind the headlines, What's Up with Girls and Sex by best-selling author Peggy Orenstein.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, is the burn overstaying his welcome?
With 5 presidential contests in the Northeast coming up, the primary season winding down, and Hillary Clinton's huge New York victory, many Democratic analysts are calling for her challenger to drop out or change his tune. Clinton has racked up so many pledged delegates and superdelegates, she has made Bernie Sanders' path to the nomination nigh on to impossible. Sanders is calling Clinton's judgment and character into question and has vowed to take his fight all the way to the convention. Clinton owes her lead in large part to women voters, particularly women of color. Women have made up almost 60% of primary voters on the Democratic side, with Clinton getting the lion's share. In New York, Clinton got the biggest boost from black women, followed by Latinas, and then white women. Many analysts say these numbers bode well for a general election, considering her likely opponent, Donald Trump, is deeply unpopular with women.
So, Congresswoman Norton, are Sanders' attacks on Clinton fair game or sexist?
Bonnie, with Trump as Clinton's likely opponent, I say hold your fire.
These attacks are totally, I think, fine. Why not? They're not sexist because it's easy to attack Hillary, who is the subject of an investigation for her email server and her role in Benghazi.
And as Bernie Sanders says, he doesn't want to hear any more about her damn emails. I mean, this has been a very cordial conversation on the Democratic side. And Hillary can take it. She is a seasoned politician. And if she can, if her campaign is suggesting that somehow Sanders is taking the low road, what's going to happen when it's Donald Trump or Ted Cruz?
I'm going to echo your thoughts. She is tough as nails. She can handle this. And she's in for, I would say, a lot worse if she faces Trump.
So nobody thinks there's sexism going on? Nobody thinks Bernie Sanders, nobody sees him as sexist?
Based on what evidence?
Just how he treats his wife.
How he treats his wife?
She was on the stage next to him and he said, get away from me, get over there.
Oh,
I thought that was pretty
I've known Bernie
indicative.
Sanders a long time, and he is not a jerk to women. I think he's got a lot of credibility with a lot of women. That's why millennial women support him. He's not a
but more millennial men support him than millennial women.
No.
And the fact is that
millennial women support him by a larger margin than millennial men do, as a matter of fact, 20-4. It's dramatic. Millennial women support Bernie Sanders. Older women support Hillary Clinton in big numbers.
Yes.
But he's not. I think the Hillary Clinton campaign is pushing this theme because it's an important theme for them. It's a winning theme for them in a general election, but it has nothing to do with who Bernie Sanders is.
So what I love is that the left loves to point to the right and say, you all have some deep fractures within your party. Well, how did Bernie Sanders make it this far? That's what's so interesting.
Well, it wasn't through fractures.
Well, I mean, there's a fracture there. The fact that Bernie is still in the race and hasn't dropped out.
Look, you got people who don't belong in the same party.
Oh, I agree.
Bernie and Clinton essentially agree. He is focused.
You don't think there's a fracture there? I mean, they asked
the fracture.
but I think I think there's a huge fracture between extreme left-wing Democrats and mainstream Democrats.
What's the huge
and
fracture?
I think it's that 30% of his voters said they wouldn't support her. A third.
You're talking about.
And she said her voters, 15% of her voters said they wouldn't vote for him.
I've seen similar figures with.
I mean,
Obama
you think mainstream Democrats are going to see themselves as socialists of any sort?
And I don't think most of the kids who support him see themselves, even though they say they will say, "Are you socialist?" Sure.
They just don't care. The Cold War is over. There's a whole generation that is not fighting to the death on this.
Well, but there's also a whole generation of people who don't understand when a politician is speaking honestly to them or making promises that absolutely cannot be
That is
accomplished.
true. Well, no, speaking honestly,
But
or
wait,
not,
Julie.
you know.
I absolutely think that there are some problems in the Democratic Party, and it is confusing to a lot of people why Bernie is still involved. It almost matches the confusion on the Republican side of why Trump is still in the race. But I think to say
Well,
that,
it does.
that
There does. I
Trump
mean,
is
Trump
winning.
is a.
I know,
Trump,
but yes,
Trump,
I know.
Pretty strong
Trump
argument
has,
to
but Trump has serious opposition,
Sure.
planned destruction, quite frankly, by the leadership of his party. You don't see that
But
against Bernie.
I think from the beginning, people just assumed that this was this was going to be Hillary's win. And the fact that Bernie is he's not just limping along. It's not Kasich.
And there
He's
you, that's
But
the
it
reason.
has,
the reason
but
he's
it
still-
has gotten to the point now where he's not going to get the delegates, and the point is
He's going to go to
why-
the convention with a huge number of delegates, more than any
Yes.
challenger has gone to the Democratic
And what
convention
price?
in
And what
decades.
price?
What price? What's
The
wrong with
price
that
is
kind of
he's got a
competition? Wait a
movement
minute. What's
behind
wrong
him.
with that kind of competition? First of all, he has hold of the issue of the epoch.
Yes.
Income inequality. It's not even just here, it's global.
Yeah.
He has done the Democratic
There are-
Party some good
quite frankly-
by
quite
putting that
frankly-
issue where it belongs.
Okay,
at the
but
top
there
of
are
the agenda.
feminist leaders who say, quite frankly, that's not the issue of the epoch.
What
the
is?
issue of the epoch is one epic that
Don't mock me, girl.
that Secretary Clinton has raised, which is income inequality. And most of income inequality is the fact that women are the majority of earners of the minimum wage, and that if there were less sexism and more
Bonnie,
equal pay, that's
Income
the real
inequality is
issue.
across the board.
Yeah.
I'm
Men and
telling you
women.
what I have.
Let's not divide people along those lines when it comes to income inequality.
Statistically, if you take it apart,
Of course, there are more
women
who are disadvantaged by income inequality. But if this were just women, it wouldn't be the issue it has become for
I'm
Bernie
telling you what
Sanders.
I have heard from feminist leaders who, you know, the older ones, the ones who can't stand Bernie, and saying that he has taken over this issue in a way that it
And just to play devil's
It's
advocate,
inappropriate.
those same women should look at Hillary and see that at the Clinton Foundation, they pay 38% less to women than they do to men.
Well,
I
and
mean, these are the
there
facts,
was
right?
and Obama, who's supposedly a big female supporter, had a very high percentage of his highest paid male employees were male.
So pot calling the
Are
kettle,
men.
right? So, I mean, it's to the point that Hillary should not have faced this much opposition until now. She should have locked it up by now. It shouldn't have taken to get to New York for her to say now it's no longer a race. And also the conflicting reports that are in the media today talking about, not just today, but for the past couple of weeks, about Bernie getting over to Philadelphia to the Democratic National Convention and staging some sort of, I don't know, getting the superdelegates to flip. There's a lot of talk of that stuff, and it's not covered enough. There's a lot of talk of what's going to happen in Cleveland this summer for the Republicans, but not enough focus on what's happening between Bernie and Hillary and how Bernie's still planning to stay his course.
He's going to go all the way to the convention.
Well, but I want to
He
get off.
represents a giant
I
movement
want to
in
get
this
off.
country.
I want to get well. Yes and
He
no.
does. He has a
but
huge
I
outpouring
want to
of
get. I
support.
want. I
He
want
has
to
a
get.
real base.
He
He has
has
a
a
real base.
minority of a minority party that doesn't even represent 50% of the population.
He's got
whether
a
we
huge
want to call
number of people
it's
who are
not
enthusiastic for him, and Hillary Clinton is struggling.
But you're
right about that.
exaggerating.
Struggling
But I
with
want to
the
get
problem.
to.
Be a
I want to
74-year-old
get to
socialist.
Julie. Julie, she's talking about picking possibly a female Veep.
That's
because
right.
she is going to win. She's
Of course,
Hillary.
yeah.
Bernie can keep his movement going. He's out of it at this point.
Yeah.
In terms of clinching the nomination.
She has said that. She said that it's quite possible that she will have a woman, possibly Elizabeth Warren, on the ticket with her.
Who wouldn't say that?
So, well,
Right.
Well,
definitely a
I will tell
possibility.
you, one of our panelists on the show who was very big Obama supporter when he had gotten the nomination, but he was talking about who he was going to pick. I was told that they were talking vanilla. In other words, nothing but a white male because he is a black man.
Well, whatever he was talking, anybody today, whether they're male or female at the top of the ticket, would always say, "I'll consider a woman."
Look, she
Well,
needs a
of course,
unifier.
consider, but I'm
News?
talking
This
about
is news?
But wait about. I want to get into who that should be, and if it should be a woman.
I think Elizabeth Warren is a super smart pick because there you have the Sanders constituency, which Hillary needs because he's the one who's getting these mega rally crowds, and she has struggled and struggled and struggled to get on top.
I submit to you that she needs somebody else. She needs somebody like Senator Warner because she needs to be able to grab this center-right, the independent voter that is just disgruntled with what's happening on the Republican side and saying, come with me. Senator Warner is one of those guys. She's going to do that. She'd be smart if she picked him.
Hillary
has
moved
big
left
numbers.
because of Bernie. She is going to move back to the center. And so in some ways, it leaves it open to have Elizabeth Warren, who is certainly left of Hillary Clinton. So I see it as a good fit. She can still have a sort of a much more liberal Democrat on the ticket as she moves right. And so I can see that as
there are many men and women on this chessboard, and you really shouldn't consider sex alone part of the country, politics.
Agreed.
Really,
The
there are
gender
a lot
should be
of
part of it. I agree.
there are a lot of factors here that need to be taken into account in a polarized country like this.
All right, let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay. From election odds to longevity.
For the first time since the government began keeping health statistics, the lifespan of non-Hispanic white women has declined. The Centers for Disease Control reports they are expected to live on average 1 month less, 81.1 years. The drop in life expectancy for white women was found to be largely due to, quote, unintentional poisoning, that is, alcohol and drug abuse. But surprisingly, instances of heart disease, cancer, and stroke decreased for this population. On the upside, the life expectancy of non-Hispanic black men is increasing by some 6 months.
So good news and bad news out of this study. Let's get to the white women part first. Why alcohol, drugs, suicide?
Yeah.
Late this week there was a report out, I think, from CDC showing suicide among young girls, young teens.
Yes.
Girls is rising.
Yes.
What's going on here
And
with
again,
women?
among all women, their life expectancy has gone down. It's a very sad report, again, showing self-poisoning, essentially killing themselves through alcohol and drugs and other risky behaviors. Look, I think one thing that's not being talked about is economic instability. Unemployment is very stressful. And in that demographic, women have a high rate of unemployment. There is increasing instability economically among women. And so we might be seeing a little bit of dealing with the stress in unhealthy ways. That's sort of my theory. I really think that, that these economic problems are very clearly aligned with worse health outcomes.
I think you're so right. I think you're so right.
Women, and just quickly, women also do the larger share of things in the household. They take care of the kids. They do all of the shopping. So if they are also the breadwinners, and we know more women are getting advanced degrees, more women are pursuing careers, if that doesn't work out, they have that stress plus all the other things that they do. Women are just facing tremendous stresses, and I think we're starting to see that in the mortality rates.
Well, what's really significant is just a few weeks ago, white men, the same was said about white men. Statistics on white men are showing the very same thing. So what do these people have in common? They are white. And if you are white in America for generations, indeed forever, you believe that things would get better for you. That no matter what was happening, it was always going to get better. That's what we're not seeing today. And the reason that black men, for example, and black women are not showing the same same outcomes is that they have always had to be aspirational. They've never had a period when they could be satisfied.
Yeah, that's really interesting because the rates of unemployment among blacks is also quite high. So I don't know if it's higher, absolutely. So I don't know if they're coping with it more.
When you say always had to be aspirational.
Because you never were equal. So you look forward to things getting better. It's never that things were great and you don't go down. Whereas white people saw things getting better, almost saw it as an entitlement, now see that it isn't and don't know what to do about it.
And the rates of
health-wise,
mortality and other health indicators for people of color have been lousy already. So they're not getting that much worse, but white people are sinking down, right, in our economy. So I think what you see happening is that the white middle class, and this is why you see Trump and Sanders getting such a tremendous response in this election, because you have this white middle class that was supported by manufacturing in this country, who had good middle class jobs, that's been destroyed. And there's this incredible anxiety, as you point out, and people are under tremendous stress. They have 3 jobs, they have little kids, they have aging parents. So yeah, I mean, it's the same as with the white working class men who are dying of heart attacks now. Women are under the same pressures. It's terrible.
Right. Well, I'd be interested to see, is this in urban areas? Is this in rural areas? Like, where exactly are we seeing this data and geographically spread out? I mean, I think in urban areas, to your point, of just the stresses of everyday life, of having to make things work in places where cost of living is just increasingly growing bigger and bigger. And a suburban sprawl as well. The suburbs are no longer a place where, you know, life is cheap anymore. So I think that's all contributing to life expectancy across many age demographics.
One last
going
quick
down.
question for you, Eleanor. 20 some odd years ago, we did a story on the show because a number of foundations were reaching out to black men in particularly, who traditionally had the worst health data in this country, and started to reach out and set up clinics and get them in to see doctors regularly instead of showing up at the hospital in their 50s with a heart attack or irreversible, terribly long-term diabetes that they weren't getting treated. Is that what helped here? And does that mean that now that it's white women who are losing ground, that that
Everybody's getting
focus
better
needs to
healthcare.
shift?
Everybody's getting better health care, certainly black men and black people.
But it's not just access to health care.
No,
It's
but-
being taught early on. You need to start seeing a doctor.
Yeah, and
you
more
need to. You
attention.
can't just wait till you get
Well, that's
drastically
what I mean.
sick.
That's what I mean by better
Prevention.
access to health care. You go before you're about to die. What is troubling, though, is that what is happening to these women, unlike that cancer and heart disease for those black men is self-inflicted.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why we're worrying, because that comes so much from psychological, from perception.
It is self-medication.
Absolutely.
And the added stress of doing it all. Behind the headlines, girls and sex. Having the talk with parents and participating in sex ed are no longer the only way girls come to understand sex. We take a look at what it means to be a girl growing up and figuring out what it all means.
Today's girls are told to embrace self-objectification as a form of confidence and power. But the thing is that because there's such a disconnect between the projection and performance of sexuality and what they're actually feeling and doing, their behavior, that confidence often comes off with the clothes.
Peggy Ornstein is a New York Times best-selling author of 5 books. In her latest, Girls and Sex, she examines how girls are navigating, as she puts it, the complicated new landscape of sex.
The culture tells girls over and over that they are supposed to be hot, as I said, and that hot is this idea that how your body looks to other people is more important than how it feels to yourself. As we, even as we push girls and then demonize them for going for this idea of hot, we don't talk to them about their bodies. With girls, you go straight from navel to knees. And then they go into partnered sex. And we expect that they're going to be able to have a voice. We expect that they're going to have a sense of entitlement. We expect that they're going to have some sense of equality.
According to Ornstein, American students may feel a greater sense of equality when it comes to sex if they are exposed to sex education classes like those that exist in the Netherlands.
There was a study that was done that compared Dutch and American girls, college girls who were the same demographic. In every measure, the Dutch fared better than the Americans in early sexual experience, and particularly the difference in the way the parents approach it. So American parents and Dutch parents aren't any more or less comfortable talking about sex necessarily, but Americans tend only to talk about risk and harm. And the Dutch talk about balancing responsibility and joy.
Some powerful women, such as Nicki Minaj and Miley Cyrus, use their own sexuality as a way to advance feminist ideals through, as Ornstein describes, self-objectification. Many young women idolize this tactic, but does it really promote equality?
We know that self-objectification has harmful impact on girls. We know it affects them cognitively. We know it affects their well-being. We know that it affects them academically, and we know it affects them in terms of leadership. Girls leave college with lower self-esteem than boys because of some of these reasons. And when girls consume a lot of objectifying media, they become more likely to justify it, more likely to see it as empowering, and less likely to support equal rights for women.
The internet, especially social media, provides singular channels of communication for girls that can contribute to self-branding and may not always have positive results.
The internet obviously is such a game changer for kids. And on one hand, there are some wonderful things about it. It's allowed, for instance, the girls who've organized to combat assault on campus to have a forum and an alternative and a voice. It's great for LGBTQ kids, especially as kids start coming out younger and younger and may not have family or community support. And it's also been a challenge in terms of girls, and again, that idea of, the externalization of the self, the development of the self from the outside in instead of the inside out. And for girls in particular, there's research that shows that they talk about the self more as a product, more as a brand that they're marketing to their, 855 BFFs. And while kids have always tried on identities and, cast them off, they did it in a small, a small community of people that they knew, and it was ephemeral and it wasn't on the internet forever. And the way that they're doing it now, it just kind of reinforces that idea. You're going to get every girl would say, of course, you get way more likes with a bikini shot than you do when you're in a parka. So again, it tells girls over and over that visibility is the measure of the self.
So as a mother of 3 daughters, how are you fighting this? How do you deal with it?
Well, I read this book on the plane with my 3 daughters, which was a little embarrassing for them because it says girls and sex on the cover. And it made a big impression on me, actually, I have to say. I mean, the 2 points that she just made, one, that we don't name girls' genitals, like we don't actually even talk about that, and that's so different from boys' experience, really hit me because I think that's really true. And reading that book—
I mean, giving them a name.
Just having girls have any familiarity and comfort with their own body. And that is happening at the same time that they're getting this massive social pressure to look good for others, and as she says, to brand themselves on social media. So it's this hyper cognizant of your looks, culture now. So then they get to college and they're having sex with boys, and it's very racy and it's sort of shocking to people my age and older. But it's not any fun for them. They're not having fun. They don't even have the basic mechanics of their own sexuality. They don't have enough knowledge about that to enjoy themselves.
So what's the
answer? They don't know how to say no. Well, I think it's true that sex ed is part of it. I think that talking to your girls, frankly, about how their bodies work. And then I think, in our culture, we've spent $1.7 billion since 1982 on abstinence-only education. And the effect of all that money has been that the kids who take it are no less likely to be sexually active, but they're much more likely not to use protection when they have sex because they're sort of in denial about it. So we need to stop that. And we need to teach girls how to love themselves and be happy with themselves and not be all about what other people see when they look at them. And I think that's really a family.
I think a lot of women who came up sooner than millennials now and their children, like you, find the idea of self-empowerment and running around in, half clothed to be, counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm. It is counterintuitive to most, but again, this is a very personal discussion. It's individual to individual, and I encourage people to go to Focus on the Family to learn some more tips on how to speak to your child about sex, because it's interesting.
But that's from a religious conservative
perspective. It's from a religious conservative standpoint, and I am not an evangelical by any means. I'm not on the far right side of my party, and I think this transcends partisan barriers here. But what they had interesting on their site sort of, again, transcends where you are religiously. They said it starts at home, and I firmly believe that. I think these talks need to start at home. Only you can have these talks with your child. Don't punt it to the church. Don't punt it to the school. But to your point about sex education and millennials, can you believe that 75% of millennials think that there should be comprehensive sex education in schools, while only 23% of us didn't have any? 23% of us didn't have any kind of sex education in the schools, yet 75% of us want it comprehensive in
Yeah,
the
but
schools.
when your own body is a foreign instrument that you do not understand, it's amazing that they got this far. Therefore, a boy who understands his body very well, is just waiting for you. And sex without any excitement to a young girl, where you see she's excited, she has excited him.
But sex, young sex and youth, that's not new.
Yeah,
I mean, that's been
I don't know
open
that
and out there since the 60s. I mean, the sexual revolution was 50 years ago.
And maybe
I'm trying to figure out what's new here.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I don't think girls are totally clueless about their own bodies. I mean, look at Beyonce. Look at the ones the entertainers. I'm too old to know their names.
They're not clueless.
That really. I mean, I think girls are told all the time to familiarize themselves with their own bodies and to pose half.
But maybe in the
clothed.
wrong way. I don't know.
No, it's
I don't
both
know.
at the same time. They're displaying themselves.
Yes.
But they don't know what makes them feel good. And when they
Sure.
have sex, they don't enjoy it. I mean, it's just,
Sure.
it's overwhelming.
But wait a second. Sex ed in schools, anyway, was never about what makes you feel good.
No.
Yeah,
and
It
that's
was
where
about
we get to
how
Yeah,
it was basic biology.
And she talks about the dire warning. So Americans just say, you're going to get pregnant, you're going to get a disease, it's going to be terrible.
We're out of
In-
time.
in
I'm sorry.
Hollywood,
That's
too.
it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.